Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Sun Wukong. Wukong is a warrior who has solid crowd control, damage, and mobility, with the caveat of needing to give up one of those aspects in order to turn one of the others from solid to great. Wukong had some time in support and even as a jungler, but those days are mostly over now and he's always seen as a bruiser solo laner. Build-wise, Wukong loves a good bruiser build, typically more on the damaging side. Going a bit tankier when you have to is fine, but lacking too much damage is going to feel very noticeable as the game goes on. Relics-wise, it's the usual fare with solo laners. You grab what you need and it's pretty much always the right call. Beads, Blink, Shell, Sprint, Med, they're all solid, but I'd say Beads and Blink are the ones that are especially good on him. Wukong is, frankly, pretty easy, but there are a lot of moving parts on him that you have to keep in mind. Starting off with his passive. When Sun Wukong is below 50% HP, he gains 10 physical power and 10 protections of each type. This amount scaling with levels, 2 power per level and 1 protection per level. If Wukong exceeds 50% HP, he retains his passive for 12 seconds. Now if you've seen a lot of my guides, you may think this is where I say, well, this is a passive that mostly plays a background role, but absolutely not. This passive is a cornerstone of Wukong and is very important to play around. So in the early game, when you're even or ahead, and this passive pops or is about to pop, you absolutely want to just start running at the lane opponent like a monkey.
Get it?
And start basic attacking, hence why you typically see at least one form of attack speed in Wukong's builds. Of course, you don't want to do this if they have all of their abilities up or are way up on health, but if you're both teetering on the 50% HP mark with your main clear abilities down, it's your perfect chance to just start walking up and slapping. I'm harping pretty hard on basic attacking and for good reason. While Wukong's basic attack chain isn't the best in the game, it's still great for taking trades with this passive, since it gives you a huge power boost significantly enhancing your basic attacks. It's pretty rare that you'll lose a trade with an opponent in a pure slap fight unless their name begins with B and ends in A. And if they start to kite you, that's where Wukong's first ability comes in. Wukong extends his pull and slams it forward, hitting any enemies in the AoE and passing through walls. Somehow. So this ability is great. It's his poke, it's his wave clear, it's his combo ender / finisher. It does exactly what it needs to do. That's not all though. This ability also does % bonus damage to minions and jungle monsters, meaning that Wukong has exceptional safe ranged clear as a solo laner, something pretty rare from a warrior. This is also where you see the popularity of Soul Eater come in, since Soul Eater will also heal you for this bonus damage as well as the base damage, which naturally is going to be hitting all 6 minions pretty much every time you cast this ability. So you can proc your passive by tanking the minion wave, heal yourself up massively as Soul Eater, then try to take a trade or simply pressure them out with the 12 seconds of passive you now have. Of course, this is only relevant so long as Soul Eater is decent, and even now, just going Jotun's Wrath into Jotun's Vigor instead is very solid. But for me, Soul Eater has been the one thing keeping Wukong playable for some time. The only other real note about this ability is that although the damage is solid, you really don't want to use it unless you're about to enter your third basic attack in your chain. Wukong has differing damage on his basic attacks, but the first 2 are relatively quick, so the wind of this ability, especially when you have your passive active, actually makes it less damage efficient than using your 2 basic attacks and then casting this ability. And this is a common theme with Wukong once you start trading in the solo lane. Get in 2 or 3 basics and then cast an ability. Just like with his second ability. Wukong spins his staff around him, creating a circle AoE. Enemies hit by this AoE are damaged, slowed, and have their attack speed slowed. The damage on the ability is surprisingly high, especially when teamed with a basic attack cancel. This ability is about as simple as they come, but there are a few things to keep in mind. For one thing, you can move while casting it, so someone not quite inside the AoE can still be hit by it if you move towards them while casting. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, this makes for a great basic attack cancel. That said though, the recovery on this time is really awful, and can easily get you poked out or even killed late game if you try to follow it up with anything other than one of your abilities, such as your third ability. Wukong is able to turn into one of 3 animals, an ox, a tiger, or an eagle, and is able to cancel the transformation at any time. Wukong gains movement speed in every form, the ox and the tiger having the same speed and the eagle having the highest speed. Wukong also gains immunities based on which form he decides to take. The Ox form is immune to slows, roots, and knockups. The Eagle form is immune to roots and slows, and the Tiger has no immunities. For good reason though, since it's the most impactful out of the 3 forms. When Wukong comes in contact with an enemy in this form, he deals very high damage and stuns the damaged enemy. This ability is of course very important when it comes to bursting down squishies, but should be used wisely while laning. Naturally, you can't just Tiger form and get a stun. Opponents are going to be sitting in their own minions just hoping you get trigger happy and pounce on an unsuspecting minion screen, leaving you wide open to both damage and ridicule. Not to mention the turning radius on all three forms is pretty awful, and this is felt most of all in the tiger form wherein you try to hit one singular target. So instead, you usually want to weave this tiger form in when you're already in the enemy's face, and like I mentioned earlier, slowed with your second ability. This gets into what type of casting you should use while using this ability, and like any other ability in Smite, I say use normal cast for as long as you need, but eventually you should try to get used to using this on instant cast for better results. For me, I just flick down hard for Ox, look straight for Tiger, and flick up for Eagle. I don't think I've mentioned this in a guide before, but this is where dash clashes come in as well, which I've just now decided is what it's officially called. You're welcome. Essentially, dashes in Smite with CC on them, like in the Tiger's case, could beat out other dashes in the game, but they connect simultaneously. Things like Tear Fearless or Ramana's Clear the Path, which they displace you, will simply not damage or CC you like they normally would, since this stun stops the ability in its tracks before it hits you. However, connect with the Hercules Driving Strike or Kukulkan's Furious Charge, which have stuns, and the two will trade, both players getting damaged and stunned. This of course can go on and on with matchups, but it's something you want to keep in mind as you're in the loading screen and thinking about the matchup in your head. Even so, much like stunning a minion in the laning phase, using this ability at the wrong time, or even on your intended target, late game, and you're just going to get absolutely exploded for doing so because of the recovery time. That's where the Ox form can come in. This form combines the aggression of the Tiger stance with the escape ability of the Eagle form. While clearly lacking in damage, it still sets you up for your second ability, as well as some basic attacks if you cancel the ability directly after hitting the enemy god with it. It also works well if you get caught out, since it has the most immunities of all the forms, allowing you to simply knock any enemies that are converging on you out of the way as you make your escape. If you see your enemies coming before they're actively on top of you, then just bird forming away is the ticket. As a jungle main myself, I can't tell you how many times I've been against a Wukong and this stupid bird form just saves him from like the dumbest situations. It's not a complete meal ticket since you are still susceptible to hard CC in this form, being that a Thorwall or Susano pull will shut you down. But using this ability after your aggressor's hard CC abilities are down almost always ensures a clean getaway. And if it doesn't, that's where your ultimate comes out to play. Wukong becomes CC immune for 1 second before banishing himself on his cloud and becomes untargetable. While banished, Sun Wukong heals himself for 5% of his maximum health every second. Once Wukong enters his banished state, he summons a clone out at his feet with half his current basic attack power and retains Wukong's current health and protections. This clone will attack the nearest enemy, prioritizing gods, and can only use his basic attacks. Additionally, it is instantly killed if it is hard CC'd other than knockups or banishes. If this clone dies before Wukong lands, Wukong will be revealed atop his cloud, meaning that enemies below will be able to see which direction Wukong plans on landing. After 5 seconds, or if Wukong reactivates this ability, he slams down in a massive AoE dealing high damage. Whew, lot to unpack there. So, if his Eagle form is his get out of jail free card, this is his get out of fucking space card? I don't know. Anyways, basically it's really hard for anyone to get around to killing Wukong if they don't kill him before he gets onto his cloud. Whether or not you survive as the Wukong depends on a few things. Sometimes all you need to do is cast the ult and mash to reactivate to get yourself a bit of space, or just use a CC immunity, ignoring the clone and damage portion of this ability completely. Other times you want to sit on top of the cloud and allow your 72 transformations to return off of cooldown, and hold out upon landing with your regenerated health until it comes back, then use your Eagle or Ox form to get away. Then of course you can use this aggressively. If you're heavily winning a trade or are just looking to finish someone off, you can of course just reactivate this ability immediately, joining up with your clone and just smacking the shit out of your lane opponent. But also, you can take a trade as the next wave is coming, ult to regen your health, then use the ultimate's heavy damage on your opponent and the wave, saving your 72 transformations for safety or for finishing off the opponent. I could go on all day, but those are the basic scenarios to use this ultimate in. Just keep a few things like the initial CC immunity in mind. It's saved me more times than I can count. Also, baiting where you're going to land by reactivating this ability early while flicking your mouse. It's not guaranteed to work on every opponent, but hey, if they position themselves on one extremity of the ability's range and you land on the other, you're usually home free. Here's a couple combos with Sun Wukong. For leveling, you want to level your 1 at level 1, your 2 at level 2, and your 3 at level 3. You can get your 3 at level 2 instead, but for me the 2 has always helped me more with wave pressure and damage trading. And from there you want to max your 1, then it's a toss up between your 3 and your 2. Your 3 is what you want to level, but in some matches you're really not going to get the chance to use it aggressively, and it's just better to use it for safety and use the safer and more easily confirmed second ability for your CC and damaging ability. And then of course level your ultimate whenever you can for that crispy damage and cooldown. So that's Wukong. A lot of moving parts, but all of them are fairly easy to understand and exploit to your advantage. Wukong is very much a lane monster. He plays the laning phase exceptionally well and is very hard to feel like you have a leg up on, and can survive pretty much any gank in the book. But it's been a long time since he came out, and there are plenty of gods who play the lane just as well, and then convert that into some crazy late games to boot. Wukong is absolutely fine in the late game if he's fed, but if the game goes on, no matter how fed you get, he will start to fall off, and there's really not a lot you can do about that. With Wukong, you need to accept the fact from the get-go that you're extremely strong and versatile past level 5, and should do everything in your power to exert maximum pressure on your lane opponent, and the solo lane side of the jungle. But the moment you feel your damage start to fall off, take it as a very serious hint to slow your roll and stop with the hyper aggression. That's all I have on Wukong for now. Thanks for watching.